Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the extra mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now your hosts, Jackson Mummy and Megan Saya from Celebration Bar Review.
Having said that, now that I've been talking about Megan's schedule, I probably should ask her to come on in. You there? Hey, did I get it right?
Yes, I believe so. I just can't believe how late the exam is, that the week after the bar is March 1st. So crazy.
It's all crazy. And when I was thinking about the fact that we literally have not had a break since this time last year, because we went right out of the February 2020 exams and we knew that the waves were crashing on the shore about the July exam. And so we went into crisis mode almost immediately, and we really didn't leave it at all. And so now coming up on this exam, which will be really the first time we're back to something that looks normal and we can get back into our regular schedule. So I know if we're feeling it, that many of you are feeling it too. And if you're taking the exam next week, we definitely understand the stress and all of the anxiousness that comes with that. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today as well. Why don't we start by just talking about what's been going on in the bar exam world, and then we'll drill down to some questions.
Yeah, so I think obviously probably the forefront of most people's minds is what's happening in Texas right now. So we did want to talk a little bit about that. Obviously at the front, the most important thing is people's safety. So I'm assuming that if you're in Texas and without power, you're probably not on this call right now, but certainly we're thinking of you and praying for you and hope that everyone's staying safe. That's the most important thing, right? Before any bar exam, you can always take another bar exam, but staying safe. Certainly, it's a pretty scary situation in there right now in that state. But the other thing we want to talk about in terms of the exam is, Jackson, if you want to talk about for people, what does it look like if you're planning on taking the Texas bar in just a few days and suddenly you're dealing with this, whether you have power or not, just the tension and the chaos that's going around you. And then certainly if you're without power, without heat, what could people be doing?
We do have an analogy for this. There have been July bar exams where people in Florida and in the Southeast have been hit with hurricanes or lost power because of hurricanes. And our advice has always been exactly what you just said. There will be another bar exam. Sometimes the wisest thing to do is to just surrender and say, I'm really not going to be able to prepare for this the way I want to. I think if you're taking the Texas bar exam specifically, because there's a limit of 5 tries for that exam, if you feel that your studies have been significantly compromised by what's happened, I would waive off of this exam more than I would in other states where you can just take it as often as you want. I think if you feel that you were ready before this week came and you still want to take it, then go ahead, because a lot of people are going to bail out. I don't think there's any doubt about that now. And that makes it, I think, a more passable test, if that's a word. But there's no reason to be a hero. I was thinking as you were talking about the weather, in years past, when we had in-person exams, you remember every winter for the February exam, we'd get some 1 or 2 stories in this last weekend before the test of people having these bizarre traffic experiences trying to drive through snow and ice and misery to get to Buffalo or Albany or wherever they were going that was in the midst of a snowstorm. It's nice to have an online exam. It takes out that part of it for sure. But there are some things you can't control. And I think this is one of those can't control deals. So I don't want people unduly stressing. If you can take the exam, if you felt like you were ready before the power went out, take the exam. But if you felt like you weren't ready before the exam went out and now you've lost 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, I think the worst thing you could do, in my view, would be to cram between now and the exam and then be into the exam and you're stressed out and you're tired and you're really working counterintuitively to everything that we've been talking about. And you know that it's a strike against you if you fail. It's a weird situation, really, and I feel badly. And I know there are people who live in Texas who are taking the online UBE in another jurisdiction, and really you're in exactly the same spot. If you're taking the Colorado bar and you're sitting in Texas right now and you can't study, you don't have the 5 strikes rule, but maybe it's not so wise to sit for the exam. So as much as we've been telling people to take the test, I think there's also a point where we have to say, you may not be able to.
Certainly be thinking about backup places that you can take it, because I know that could be an issue for people as well, that the weather is supposed to start warming up a bit within the next few days. I just looked, and for instance, Dallas set a high of 65 on Tuesday. Yeah. But certainly that's not a guarantee that power will be back. And we hope, obviously, that's really the hope, is that every single person will have power back before Tuesday and the exam time. But certainly if it was me, I would start to think about some backup plans to make sure that you have a place to take it that is going to have electricity. The other thing that I'm thinking of, Jackson, about this is, I don't know if you even remember and all the chaos that happened with the last exam, but because the bar got pushed so far back, it ended up really getting pushed into hurricane season. And Louisiana, who gives their own state bar, they had a hurricane set to barrel down on them. And so they ended up canceling, pushed back again. And the weird thing and the unfortunate thing with Texas right now is literally this is the first time they're not doing their own exam. They're doing the UBE. And so they can't just unilaterally push back. Such a weird thing that if this had happened 2 years ago, Texas could have, I don't know if they would have, but they could have made the decision to say, this is really unfair for our applicants. We're going to give people, if you've lost a week, we're going to give everyone an extra week of study. But unfortunately, they're taking the UBE. So it has to be done at the same time as the rest of the country.
Yeah, that's really the key is the NCBE controls everything. And in the fall, they didn't control states like Florida or Louisiana. And so it was less of a problem, but here we are. I think that's it. I just saw an article just as you were talking, came across my wire that Texas still says they're going forward with the online exam. So I wouldn't expect them to say anything less, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people are going to take that exam. Certainly people that live in Texas, I don't know. It'd be tough to figure that they could stay in there for a long time. So we'll see what happens. And I just want to echo what you said, Megan, where our thoughts and prayers for the safety of people, that really comes first. Bar exam, way down the list on those things.
Yeah, definitely. A student of ours raised a really good question that I hadn't even thought of, which is that ExamSoft is headquartered in Dallas. So this is not a Texas taker, but they were wondering, okay, so now what happens with the rest of the country's exams? Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. The answer is it probably doesn't have any impact at all. Most companies that are online, like us, are really in the cloud. So in those years past when we had hurricanes, it actually didn't impact our students' ability to study because everything was on the cloud through Amazon Web Services. I would imagine that Examplify and ExamSoft have very much the same structure. And in fact, as you pointed out, Megan, the support, when you call in or you text for support, you're not talking to somebody sitting in an office in Dallas right now. That's probably getting farmed out to wherever people are around the country. So I don't think there's an impact there. We've not seen or heard anything published that says that ExamSoft anticipates any problem on the exam. The good news really is that they went through all of the stress testing in October, really, around the country and in California. They had lots of people, lots of things happen. I would presume that both Examplify, ExamSoft, and the other proctoring company that's name escapes me now, if they're even doing any work, and the bar examiners are now experienced. They know what to expect. They're smarter about this. And so I would not expect any impact from this. But I thought you had an interesting take on this as well in terms of why we might be looking at that and what the impact might be for a student. You want to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah. So I think what's really interesting to me is that I think everybody who is a stakeholder in the bar review or bar taking world, last year we got conditioned a bit to almost expect these last minute changes and these we saw Florida did that, 11th hour switch there, pushing the exam back. Obviously, again, in Louisiana, we saw that nationwide where everything kept getting pushed back a little bit. We had many jurisdictions that said, that's okay, we're going to go ahead with July, and then ended up saying, never mind, we're going to do September. Okay, never mind, we're going to do October. So we spent a year being used to 11th hour changes and last minute reprieves for those people who were feeling a little bit, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm ready. Oh, good. It's like you show up to take the test in high school and your teacher, turns out she got the flu and she's not there, and you get to wait till next week. So when that happens, I think that it makes sense that right now people may be thinking or looking for one of those last minute reprieves. And so I just want to point that out gently and caution people. The exam is going to go forward. It went forward in 2020. And if it went forward in 2020, it's going to go forward now because, like you just said, Jackson, they've really done the stress test. They've worked out, not that things are perfect, but they figured out a way to do it in a global pandemic and in a time when with very little notice, they couldn't hold the exam in person. And so I do want to caution people to not be looking for or making assumptions. Oh, people are out of power in Texas. ExamSoft is in Dallas. We have no idea if ExamSoft has been without power, but making that sort of leap of maybe ExamSoft is without power. And maybe if ExamSoft is without power, then they'll cancel the test or they'll push the test back. And I'm not saying that's what this student was doing, but I went there in my head of thinking, yeah, I see how we can go down those roads. And so certainly a few days before the exam, I just never say never. We've learned that, but it's going to happen on Tuesday, barring something. The exam's going to happen on Tuesday. So I do want people to not give themselves that out of maybe I can take my foot off the pedal a little bit because ExamSoft, maybe they don't have power. Florida students said they had no problem downloading Florida questions from ExamSoft yesterday. Someone else in California said I was able to download my exams today in California. So again, there's no indication that ExamSoft is experiencing any problems related to the power outages.
Yeah, I think that the reality is that we had what we called the Sunday surrender last year when Florida waived off the exam 48 hours before the test. That was a really bad precedent because then it raises the possibility or the specter that it could happen again. Let me tell you, the last thing any bar exam wants to do is what happened in Florida. They took so much heat for that. And when the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court just gets pillared for waving the white flag, the ego of those folks are such that they do not want a repeat of that for anything. So I think it would take even more catastrophic, cataclysmic events than we've seen this week, as crazy and horrible as they are. So I think the bottom line here is keep studying, keep assuming everything's going to happen as it's supposed to on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. And don't get distracted by this, though it is very distracting. Don't get distracted. Just keep your head down and keep working, as we've said all along.
Yes, definitely. Okay, let's turn to some quick news about the July exam. A few new jurisdictions made announcements that they are going to be giving the exam online. Again, this is expected. We do expect more to announce after the February exam has been completed. But the new ones are Connecticut, DC, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, and Massachusetts. So
yeah, that's quite a few for this early. And I think you're right. I think after next week's exam, you'll start seeing others. I just don't see California and New York going back to in-person testing.
Oh, California already, they announced a long time ago they're doing it online. Yeah, those are just the new.
Oh, the new ones. Okay,
new
sorry, I forgot. California's on. All right. Yeah. So I don't think we've heard from Florida yet. I don't think we've heard from Texas. I don't think we've heard from Georgia. I don't think we've heard from New York. But I would expect all of those states to be back in the online category. I think the states that went in person in February probably stay in person. That seems to be their mode. They're the smaller, more rural states, but that's a minority of states. I think the majority of states in the country went online in February, and I would expect online again in July. I just don't think it's going to change dramatically, but we'll keep you updated on that. You can also check out the Bar Examiner's website. They've got that information, and they're pretty up to date on those.
All right. And then one last note for all of our students, MBE 3, which are the July 91 test questions 1 through 100, are online now as well. So
yeah. So we've only.
All right. So let's get into some administrative questions that people had. All right. I currently have fine motor limitations, making the use of computer work study challenging at this time. I'd like to order the course. The order form does not offer an option for the test date I'm aiming for, 2024 or 2025.
Let's start with the uniform bar exam. And again, we see this happening all across the country. People that have been away from the exam for a long time think that they're taking a state-specific exam. There are, 32, 33 states now that are in the UBE. Most states are in the UBE. California, Florida, and Georgia are not. And then there's a handful of other states like Pennsylvania and Louisiana and so on that are not UBE, but almost every state is UBE. The test in New Jersey is the same test you take in New York and in Colorado and in DC and in Illinois and in every other UBE jurisdiction. So there's not a state distinction that there was years ago. Second part of that question is more tricky, and we talked about it last week, and that is that when we start to get to 2024 and 2025, we are looking at the possibility of the new integrated bar exam, which will be a different test. We don't know when that specific test will be rolled out to people. It will be the bar exam as we know it up until the point that it switches over to the new, what's being called integrated exam. That changes everything. When the integrated exam comes along, no more multistate, no more specific subjects or essays. It's just all different. And we did a podcast, episode 347, you and I bonus podcast about that upcoming test. But you should be trying to take the bar exam now. I don't believe there's any real good reason to postpone 4 years from now, no matter what's going on. If you think you're going to take the bar exam in 4 years, the truth is you probably don't think you're going to take the bar exam. If you want to take the bar exam, take it now. There's nothing that really should keep you from taking it. And whatever limitations that people think they have, and believe me, we hear them all: physical limitations, financial limitations, family limitations, physical limitations in where they are, where they're going to be. None of those things are real ultimate barriers. And when people want to take them, we've seen people take the test in all of those circumstances, under all of those conditions. So don't use those things and say, I'm going to take the test 5 years from now. 5 years from now, look at the test and see what you want to do, but don't pretend you're going to study for 5 years. I don't know anybody that studies nonstop for 5 years without taking the test. And I wouldn't advise that. I think that's a bad strategy. So really what I would say to that student or anybody in a similar situation is either sign up to take the test next year and go for that, or just drop out for now. Ultimately, take the test sooner rather than later. This test is a good test. You should take it and you can pass it. And if you think you need help from a physical standpoint, request accommodations. If it's a legitimate problem, request accommodations. And in most cases, you can get them. But trust me that waiting 5 years to take the test doesn't change anything. It just prolongs the agony.
Yeah. This is another question about the test in 2024. I think this is what I was nervous about, is that by talking about it, we would just open the floodgates, right, of people. I don't know. Let's put it in perspective. I just want to put this in perspective before I say the question. In 2020, when we didn't know that anything was changing, 0 people were asking us about taking the test in 2023 and 2024. 0. No one was saying these things. I just want, and Anne just said, sometimes things come up like cancer or the death of a child. Of course, we're not saying, clearly, I hope this is super clear. We are not saying you have no excuse. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and take the test tomorrow. And I hope, we were just talking about this with Texas. We're advising people, if your life situation you are going through crisis right now, you should not take the test next week. So absolutely. I want to be really clear on this. The problem is that there's no good reason to start studying today for a test in 4 years. Right. So in those cases, if you or a loved one was just diagnosed with cancer and your life is dramatically changing, or you just went through a horrible death that you are grieving from, I would not advise you to buy a bar review course and start studying for the bar exam. So this is really for people who are buying a course and then asking questions about 4 or 5 years down the road. God willing, you will not be talking to us in 4 or 5 years. I don't want you to still be talking to us in 4 or 5 years, because that means that you have not taken or passed the exam. And that's not the goal. So I just want to be super clear that this is a new thing, because this test format is changing. It's causing people to start thinking really far down the road. And that's not the healthiest way to deal with taking the bar exam, studying for the bar exam. This test was made initially for study that would be, you graduate from law school and you study for it for 3 months and then you take it. So when people start talking about studying for it without taking it for years, it's not productive. Okay. It's just not a productive way to study. So if your life situation is such that you can't do it now, that's totally fine. Of course.
Don't pretend you're going to study during that time either. You're ready, come back. I mean, we'll be here.
Exactly. We'll be here. Okay. So that being said, here's the next question. If I'm ready and able to sit for the test in 2024, again, it's just too early to think about that. But if I'm ready and able to sit for the test in 2024 with the current test format and prep, but either need to take the test again or miss the 2024 test and the new format is starting, will Celebration Bar Review be able to help us get up to date to take or retake the new exam format?
We'll be ready for the new exam when it comes out. We've really been leading the bar review world in watching this and being engaged in it. So I have no doubt we're going to be ready. It also, the new bar exam structure, if you watch the podcast that Megan and I did, it bends right into our wheelhouse. It is built for the way we teach. So we are really excited about it. We think it's going to be a great test. Nonetheless, up until the moment it becomes the test, we have the existing test and we've got people prepared for that. The transition will be unlike anything we've ever seen before because the bar exam has never changed like this before. But I'm confident we're going to be able to do it. We've got a really strong staff of people who can do that. So when we get there, we'll talk about it. But I don't have a way to answer that question today except to say we'll be ready and we can do it. We're confident of that. And we're not sitting back and just idly twiddling our thumbs. We are very active. We're like the duck, right? On the surface, we may look reasonably calm. Underneath, we are paddling like crazy. And I can assure you that we intend to make this as smooth a transition as we can. But again, to echo what Megan just said, it is way too early for you all to be thinking about that. That's really our problem, not yours.
Yes. Okay. So hopefully that's clear and not trying to be harsh at all. We don't want the bar review to take over the next decade of your life. Go away and come back. We'll be here. We'll still be here. We're not going anywhere. This company's been around for a really long time. It's not going anywhere. So we will still be here.
It may be that Megan will be doing this and I'll just be crocheting or something. I don't, we'll be here one way or the other.
All right. There's one more question about the exam. When I'm reviewing with the book, is there a suggested study guide timeline for the 2024-25 test? And I'll just say, let's make this more generic too. Basically, is there a suggested study guide timeline for any test, right? If I'm taking the July test, if I'm taking 2022 test, right?
It's all, right now, it's all the same. It's about 250 to 300 hours to get through everything. We don't know what it'll take to get ready for that test in 24-25.
Yeah. And we'll just clarify again here that timeline for studying for a test that's more than 4 years from now, I would say, is don't start studying.
Don't study. Yeah, we don't study.
A lot's going to change between now and then, even not just thinking about the changes in the exam structure, but sometimes we see the law changes. Sometimes we see that, gosh, the examiners really love this type of question and they've suddenly shifted in the last few years. We've seen a lot of this type of question or things like that.
There's different subjects, right? We've already identified
the subjects. So definitely, I would say that's the study guide timeline for if you're looking at 3+ years is probably don't start studying it because you're not going to remember it in 3 years. Trust me, you pass the exam and it all just flies out of your head. So yes. Yeah. Ask any lawyer, any practicing attorney, hey, what can you tell me who doesn't practice in, let's say, wills? What can you tell me the requirements in your state? And they'll say, I knew it for the bar. And then I promptly forgot it. So this is more of a question. Someone asked a question about confusion about a topic days out from the exam. And so we're not going to talk through the actual black letter law for this, but I think this was a good question of any advice on how I can clear up my brain fog on these topics. What do I do when just a couple days out from the exam, I'm studying and realize, I don't know, this is just these subjects are confusing to me.
Okay. So to start out, I think there are several different tools that can really help you at this point. BarMaps, as you may know, are a set of interactive videos plus mind maps plus fast finish audios. You can also buy BarMaps at $75 a subject. And so let's say that your problem area is property. You would buy the property BarMaps and you would find the section of the lecture that is specific to the area that you're having difficulty with. You would look at the mind map for that section, and that's the first level of review. The second thing I would then do is go back into the outline, whether you're a photo reader or a regular reader, and find that section, do a word search for that section, and look at what's been said about that particular topic, just that part, not the whole subject, but just that part. Then the third thing that I would do after that is you could even go into, let's say you're in property, go to your electronic version, the PDF version of the personal trainer workbook for that subject. So property is in trainer book 1 or 2, wherever it might be, and do a word search in the questions for that particular topic. So let's say it's a pertinent easement, type that in, and you'll get all the questions that have that language in it. And you could do those questions, right? So there's another way to work your way through all of that material. I guess the point I'm trying to make is I want you to think of narrowing down your study rather than making it broad. What people tend to do at this stage is that they think, I'm having a problem with this, and it's in property in my example. I'll study all of property again. And that's the worst thing to do. You could do the same word search for essays in your books and find the essays that had a topic or part of the discussion there, and do just that part of the call of the question. So as you narrow down, you spend 3 hours or 6 hours working on that one specific area. Now, it has to be something that generally is worth 3 or 6 hours of study. If it's so marginal, if it's so esoteric, if what you are looking at is that you want to know how the Congress's taxing power, how does that work? That is so tiny and so narrow and so specific. It's not worth 3 hours of your time. If we're talking about big subjects, things that dedicate a section of the lecture to, by all means do it. If it's less than that, I think not. So that's what I would do in that brain fog. And then ultimately, I'd walk away from it. There are some things you are just not ever going to understand. I will never understand the rule against perpetuities. Just won't. I've studied it. I teach it. I can read the words. I can do a lot of things, but I really don't understand it. Not like I should. And at some point, I just have to say, yeah, I'm not going to get it. So that's my thought. You want to add to that? I know you've got some strategies that you've used as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. That's what I would say is doing the multidisciplinary study of it. So doing an essay on it, or at least reviewing an essay on it, reviewing some multiple choice questions about it, going back into the lecture, and then going back into the outline and getting a broader feel for the topic and how it fits in with other topics is usually the way to go.
I thought you were going to go for mind maps. You want to talk about how you use a mind map in that situation?
Yeah, hopefully people have made their mind maps. And so you want to go back into that and see the connections and see what are the requirements and see how it all fits together. And if you don't understand from your mind map, then rework it. So especially if you're doing it online, it's really easy. Move things around as necessary to get that better understanding of when am I going to see this concept? In what scenarios does this concept apply? Whatever it is that's tricky for you, after you've gone back into the lecture and the outline, you want to then, or maybe you've seen it in a problem in an essay, so you can contextualize it a bit. You want to manipulate that in your mind map as well. So yes, hopefully February students, you've already been doing that. But July, certainly I would say if you run into things like that, you have so much time, make those mind maps. Do that now. You will thank yourself. When we get to July, you'll be thanking today. You'll be thanking past you for doing it. This student said, my MBE 1 is 54%. I'm going to review the answers tomorrow, which is actually today. Please let me know what I should do next.
That's not a strong enough score that you should feel comfortable. It's not a number I'm looking at that I like. I'm looking on the MBE 1 that you would have something on the range of 125 to 130 raw questions, correct? So if you're getting less than that, then I think you absolutely have to go back and review the answer explanations for that test. You got to look at the mind maps like you were just talking about, Megan. And I think it's absolutely critical at that point to ask, what are you doing when you're answering questions? And I would guarantee that what that person is doing is that they're trying too hard. They're trying to analyze answer choices. Was A better than B, C, or D? As soon as you're doing that, you're in trouble. You're going to start to see effectiveness drop off pretty dramatically. And so you've really got to get into selective intuition. You've got to let go. The danger point, I know we're going to talk about this here at the end, but the danger point is that people start to tense up and grip too tightly. They become too fixated and too aware of the exam, and I've got to pass, and they just start doing this, right? They just get this tense. And as soon as you do that, it's just like cutting off all of the blood flow. It's just like making it so much harder on yourself. And then we see these scores start dropping. People that have been doing dramatically better suddenly start getting worse because they're like Wile E. Coyote running off the edge of the cliff, and they look down and they go, oh my God, I'm going to fall. And they do. I think that the answer when you've got a score like that is, look, that's not a successful score. Do not go off and do essays right now or performance tests. Stay in multistate, get that score up there. You've got to get that score to a passing number in your jurisdiction. And you're going to do it not by trying harder, but by relaxing and spending more time in your BarMaps, more time with the mind maps that you've created, doing the fast finish, doing the nutshell videos. All of those things are great tools, but you just got to relax and let them work.
Yeah, I read this. We received an email from a student this week that I think just hopefully is like helpful for people if they're in February, and then also to nudge gently the July students. So like, here's some things you can be doing now that you'll be grateful for later. This student is taking the February bar and said, I feel at this point I'm ready to slay this beast. You mentioned several days ago in one of your daily email posts about the irrational weekend. I do have to say that I did survive the irrational weekend without any undue stress and only have Celebration Bar Review for helping me through it. While I received several different messages over the weekend from other people I know, not CBR students, that are planning on sitting for the February exam, they advised me they felt like they needed more time and seemed stressed. I guess it didn't make them feel any better when I advised them I feel like I'm ready for it. Yeah, probably that's hard to hear. But I feel, this is the key, I feel that the following assisted me in feeling confident for the upcoming exam: the Abundance for the Bar Study Master Course, photo reading, the MBE nutshell videos, and the FLA writing format all played a major part for me during this process. So I just hope that, obviously, we hope that the February students are feeling that way, and certainly suggest for the July students that you think now about what resources am I going to want when it's my turn? What do I feel like I need to use, to utilize, to understand better, to manipulate, whatever it is when you get to your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks. That was a nice note. We get a lot of those kinds of notes. We don't do a lot of that pat ourselves on the back stuff. We get those notes every day from people. And I think it's important to just recognize that most of our students are pretty calm relative. If you want to see crazy, I know, Megan, you follow the Reddit threads and some of the others. There's a lot of crazy out there around the bar exam, and we don't see much of that, relatively speaking. So I'm glad that many of you are staying calm. That writer talked about the abundance masterclass. I think for this last weekend, 90 minutes in that masterclass could be a huge game changer, particularly if you're feeling really tense and anxious about the exam. It's one of the great tools I think that we've created for people to help them deal with that anxiety and stress and how to just manage it.
Yeah. All right. So with this last 9 minutes or so that we have, I'll give you a specific question, but really it's more of a broad question that we get asked a lot at this point. So this one student is saying, I just finished the substantive portion of the study guide on Monday. How should I organize the review process? But the broader question that's linked to, I think, which everyone is asking, is basically, how should I use these last, 6 days that I have left? What should I do to prepare myself for this exam on Tuesday?
Yeah, it's a great question. And in the daily emails, I try to address that each day as we go along. You've probably been hearing a lot about snakes and rats and rodents over the last few days. I don't know why it works out that way. But I think that there's a couple of different categories that we want to think about. The first, obviously, is substantive study. What should you be doing substantively? And when it comes to substantive study, I think that the key here is work on what you don't know. Make yourself substantively. Not the entire subject, as we were just talking about in my property example, but narrowing down to the things you don't know, and then giving yourself an intense 3-hour study session on just topic or trouble with. The idea is to desensitize yourself. If you saw something that was going to frighten you on the exam, take 3 hours now and get comfortable enough with it that if it shows up, you're not thrown by it. So you want to work on the things you don't feel good about. For many people, what that means is making a list of all of the subjects on their test and putting them in rank order. And most of us can identify the 3 or 4 that we're really uncomfortable with and 3 or 4 that we feel very comfortable with, and then everything else is in that squishy middle. Take the 3 or 4 that you're most uncomfortable with and just start identifying what in those subjects are giving you trouble and work downward on that list. That's where you should spend your time. The nature of most people, our human nature, is to go to the things we're good at, right? So we do the things that feel comfortable. So I see some people doing massive numbers of multiple choice questions, and they're doing just fine, and they've been doing just fine. And I'm like, dang, write some essays. Get into the stuff you don't know. If you're getting 80% of your multiple choice questions correct, you don't need to be doing more multiple choice questions right now. You need to be doing other things. Find where you're weakest and spend your time there. So substantively, that's what I want people to be doing on that end. The second thing I would say is emotionally and mentally, you've got to get yourself mindset or headspace to take the exam. So things like the Abundance Masterclass, if you've taken it before, go back and watch it again. I get this comment all the time from people who say, oh my God, I went back, it's fabulous, and I'm so glad I did it. If you've not done it, and you're saying, oh man, he's just trying to get me to buy something else. Yeah, you're right. I want you to buy it because it'll help you pass the bar. That's the only reason we do it. You should do it. And there's been no negative comments. Ask on Facebook. Go to our Facebook group. You will get nothing but raves about it. It works. Just do it. You should be spending time making sure that emotionally and mentally you are at your peak, not at your low end. So you want to take this positive expectancy about the exam. You should expect to pass. You should be ready to pass, and you should have that mindset going in. And then the third component, I think, is physical. You need to be sleeping and eating and taking care of yourself right now. It's easy to get caught up in thinking, if I do another couple of hours of study, that'll be better for me. It won't. Go to bed now, starting today, Wednesday. Start setting your going to bed and your waking up time to match up to the 2 days of the exam. Whatever that means for you, whenever you've got to get up for the exam, that's when you need to start getting up. a week ahead. You need to go to bed when you're going to go to bed for the exam. You need to eat the food you're going to eat on exam day. Not every day, but you got to get into a routine. You've got to be thinking about the room that you're taking the test in, whatever that is. If you control it, do I have proper lighting and ventilation? Do I have a comfortable seat? Is it non-disturbing to me? What's going on there? And make sure that those things are taken care of. And so you want to watch your physical health. And then the final area is logistics. Take care of the logistics. Read your darn emails. Just read them carefully. Read them from us, read them from the bar examiners, read them from ExamSoft. Read your email. Check your spam folder every day. It is not an excuse to say, I didn't see the email. The bar examiners don't care. You are held to an affirmative responsibility to know this stuff. Check it. Make sure you're doing those mock tests that are given if you're online. Make sure that you're following the requirements that the examiners have given you. If you're traveling to an exam, make sure you've got all the right materials and that you're set up properly for all of that. Do the things that lawyers have to do to be prepared. And I think most of you probably didn't watch the impeachment trial because you were busy. Later, when you come back into the world and you watch it, you will be stunned at the difference of preparation between the two sides. One side was prepared. Forget about the merits. One side was prepared. The other side was wildly unprepared. And when you see the wildly unprepared, you begin to ask yourself, wow, that's just not a good look. That is not what a lawyer should be doing. It doesn't represent the profession well. But many of you come to the exam in that same chaotic, crazy level of anxiety, and it's just not your best. So those are the 5 areas that I think you have to be thinking about and working on in order to be successful. And Megan, you've sat very patiently while I talked about all that, but I'll give you the last word on all of that.
I think I'll just focus on the mental piece, the emotional piece, really briefly, that I have watched all of you put in the work, right? I have watched you study. So many of you I've spoken with because we've done personal writing workshops together. We've done coaching together. I know that this stuff like it's in there, it's in your head. And it's really the biggest block that I see, and what is heartbreaking for me every exam without fail is the people who I worked with, who I saw them doing the work. I saw them succeeding at the work and doing great and getting the test scores that they needed right on the MBEs. And I saw them writing amazing essays and great performance tests. And then I don't see their name on the pass list. And I talk to them, or Jackson talks to them afterwards, and we find that they were just like, I panicked. I froze. I threw everything that we had been talking about out the window because it was just, I got scared. And so I am begging you all, I'm telling you, getting scared has never helped anyone pass the bar exam. It can only hurt you. So you've got to trust yourself. At the end of the day, it's you. And for most of you, it's going to be just you sitting alone, literally in a room. And you're the only one who can do this. It's just you at the end of the day. And it's so hard for Jackson and June and myself and everyone to push you out there into the world. And it's okay. Like, we wish we could sit there with you and remind you and be sitting on your shoulder and telling you, don't forget what we talked about. Remember how you executed this so well. Yeah. Yes. So you're so capable, and you have to believe that, and you have to trust in the work that you've been doing. So that's really my big thing is, in this last week, focus on what you need to get yourself in a good mindset, positive self-talk, no negative self-talk. I don't want to hear at this point, oh, I'm bad at contracts. I don't understand Civ Pro. Yes, you do. You're not bad at contracts. Yeah, it's not your easiest, but you're not bad at it. And you do understand Civ Pro, right? Maybe there's a concept that's difficult, or what my kids' lovely kindergarten teacher would tell them, I don't know how to do that yet. Whatever it is, I don't understand it yet. So remember that and trust and get rid of those yets this week. Anything that you're like, I'm not where I want to be yet, have the expectation of, but I will be by Tuesday. So best of everyone.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So we want to wish all of you the very best on this exam. For all of you, I want to remind you, you do have big ears. You can fly. You don't need any magic feathers. You're capable of doing this. And we have great confidence in you. Every exam, we see people who have these great, incredible success stories, and you're the next one. And you should go in thinking, I am the next one, the next incredible success story. If you do that, if you believe that, then it's going to happen for you. So thanks to all of you for being with us. We wish everybody safety and health and warmth and good internet connections. And we'll see you in a couple weeks. And go out there and kick some bar exam butt, those of you taking the test next week. All right, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening and watching the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at celebrationbarreview.com.